Okay, well, greetings everyone. We're at the concluding session of the European Green Infrastructure Day. There have been a number of really wonderful discussions throughout the day. So those of you who haven't been able to attend for the whole day, sorry about that, but everything will be recorded. So you will have chances to get back to it. And the last session in particular, I very much enjoyed. Climate adaptation is one of my topics that I work with daily, and that's very important. And I felt my colleague Stephen Peck did a wonderful job of moderating that session. Stephen also has a deep affinity for the topic that we're discussing this time, which is the well-being aspects of green infrastructure. And that is often termed with we use the term biophilic design or biophilia. So, and that's one of his favorite topics. And he has some great materials on his website, Green Roof for Healthy Cities, and the Green Infrastructure Academy on that. So thanks to our organizers, Milena, Luigi, Matteo, Antonin, and perhaps others that I don't have on my little list here so far. We have a wonderful panel, and this is also a really great topic. It's late in the day, so I think you're getting your dessert at the end of a long meal here today. So we have Xavier Troussard, and please correct me if I get your names so very wrong. Xavier is the head of unit for the new European Bauhaus in the European Commission. We have Karlis Goldstein, who is going to be somewhat late to this session, so he will be coming in as we go. Karlis is the advisor to the EU Commissioner for Energy, Kadri, Simson. We have Stefano Boeri. He is the founding partner of Studio Boeri Architects, which I am very happy to have an architect on our panel here. And then we have Anna Maria Bagnall. She is a professor of health and well-being evidence and director of the Center for Health Promotion Research at Leeds Beckett University. Welcome to all of you. I will just say a little bit about myself first, but try not to say too much. This isn't about me. I'm educated as an architect and building engineer. I have several years of experience working with urban planning, area planning, and urban sustainability strategies and issues. I migrated from the municipal sector to the health sector 7.5 years ago. I am the current chairperson for the Norwegian Association for Green Infrastructure. I am a board member of the World Green Infrastructure Network, and I also am a member of the European Healthcare Climate Council, which also has a focus on climate adaptation. And I'm actually hoping to weave climate adaptation using blue-green solutions into work at hospitals because of the health benefits of green infrastructure in addition. So just a few things to just frame this discussion before we start with questions to the panel. The situation that we find ourselves in globally now, that is that we're moving from a little more than half of the global population living in cities to 2/3 living in cities in 2050. We are in a situation where when we're in cities, we're also using a lot of time inside. Europeans presently spend around 90% of their time inside And we also have the increasing digitalization of our lifestyles. We're using more time behind screens for every year that passes. Presently, we're using just about 7 hours a day on average, with significant variations depending on what country and where you are in the world. But on average of 7 hours, some much more than that. So we're in this situation where I think just about everyone in cities is suffering from what some are now calling nature deficit disorder. So I think that's sort of, and that applies very well also to this COVID and perhaps COVID, post-COVID situation that we're coming into. And then the other thing about where we are, we have through the day today, we've heard about a number of important European Union initiatives and policies. I personally haven't heard so much very concrete, like in the form of strategies or plans, addressing the topic that we're going to address in this session. We do have the Bauhaus, the new European Bauhaus movement, which hopefully will embrace this. And there are other things happening in the EU. There's the going beyond GDP work, and there's a wonderful document called The Economy of Well-Being. But even those documents and processes, they really haven't squarely addressed the possibilities for biophilic quality in cities. So those are my personal opinions, and but I think that can be an interesting way to frame some of the questions that we're going to look into. So now I would like to just start with questions to the panel. The first question is first for Stefano. Stefano, are you with us? Can we hear you now? Yeah. Stefano, can you take your microphone? Stop muting your microphone. There you go. Okay, so Stefano, the question for you first. That is, from your point of view, what are the most significant barriers and opportunities to address to make European cities more human-centered and livable and sustainable?
Well, we have now many challenges, and I believe that one of them is to imagine a different relation with living nature. So we know well how cities, not only in Europe, are consuming the natural resources, how they account for, let's say, basically 70–75% of the global CO2 emissions, and how they, let's say, contribute to the production of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, that and to the global surface warming of the planet, causing ice melting, biodiversity loss, and rising sea levels. And at the same time, we know that forests and trees, which are at the risk of continuous erosions all over the world, also in Europe, absorb nearly the 30% of fossil fuel emission, and largely produced by cities every year. So I believe that European cities, which are for their part responsible for climate change problems, have to have the opportunity to become, let's say, an integral part of their own solution by increasing the number of forests and trees, let's say, that can fight the enemy on its own ground, the city using CO2 as a fertilizer. So what I believe is that it is true that we have a lot of, let's say, technical tools to, now we have many alternatives, also in energetical fields, in order to avoid to produce CO2. When we consider the necessity to absorb the CO2 who have been already produced, well, basically we have only plants, we have only trees, we have only the photosynthesis. So what we have done, what we try to do a long time is to imagine different ways to, let's say, put together the natural environment and the artificial environment, how we can demineralize our city, how we can introduce large biological surfaces in our urban environment. And that's well, it's a way to absorb CO2 through photosynthesis, to reduce the pollutants, and the pollutants, let's say the air pollution, we know how much was contributing to the diffusion of the pandemic in some parts of the world, because the pollutants are weakening our capacity to contribute to the leaf. So I think also in terms of try to minimum the respiratory diseases and the premature death that were related to the pandemic, it's so important now to multiply the number of green surfaces in our environment. So I believe that is something that now is present in the public policies of many European cities. And I believe at the same time that we have to let's say, accelerate the trend. So we have to do everything we can do all together and in the same, with extreme urgency, in order to do this step, which has to do with mobility, which has to do with the transformation of, let's say, of districts, of urban districts in a self-sufficient community where people could find what it needs in 15 minutes time. What to do also with another issue which is so important, with the fact we have to transform let's say, where we are still using carbon fossil energy for mobility and for heating the city. So there are many things we need to do immediately, and they are extremely urgent. And what I normally use to think is also to go back to this concept of natural-based solution, but I think it's absolutely crucial in this moment.
Okay, that was interesting. As an architect, you were speaking very much to ecological sustainability, which of course is important, but would you like to just build on what you said a little bit about the human-centered and livable aspect of that? You mentioned the connection between green surfaces and human health, but would you like to just elaborate on that shortly? We'll hear more about that later, also from Anna Maria, especially.
Yeah, sorry, the question for me, I didn't answer.
Yes, would you like to build on what you said regarding the human-centered and livability aspect of the question?
Yeah, no, I think it's the concept of let's say, a new alliance between our artificial world and living nature. It's a concept who is possible to scale, you know. So, for instance, what we have done as architects in this year is to develop this typology of vertical forests that are building with a very high concentration of plants in a very small surface of an urban soil. So in Milano, these two buildings are hosting 21,000 plants, and we are now in Eindhoven, in Holland, in Germany, in other parts of Europe, trying to improve this typology with a high concentration. It's like an ecosystem which is really promoting a very relevant biodiversity or living species in one space. But the same thing is possible to do at the scale of an entire city, and all what is about urban forestation. That is not only about create let's say orbital forest, but also to introduce forest and parks and garden, to work with the green roofs, and all that is important. And again, at a different scale, I think that we were present in New York at the climate change summit. Basically, was 2 years ago, 1 year and a half, and together with FAO, UGARD, and other institutions, were promoting the idea of let's say biodiversity corridors. Let's say using the example of this amazing great green walls that Africa and African countries are building south of the Sahara Desert, but including cities. So cities can and should become greener, and in that way, instead of being obstacle to the creation of this, let's say, continental biodiversity corridor, they could become generator of this, let's say, system of green and natural linear environments. So I believe that was another very important issue for Europe in the next future.
Yeah, thank you. I think you used the word reimagine or reinventing quite early on in your what you were telling us, and I appreciate that very much. I think that's what we need to do is reimagine, and perhaps not even just reimagine the nature that we surround ourselves with, perhaps also reimagine who we are, so that we interact with nature in a way that is actually better for us. But we'll get back to those questions. Xavier, do you have anything to add to that particular discussion about human-centered, livable, and sustainable European cities?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I think that if we look at the major barrier, when we look at the transformations that are needed and that are asked for by people, it is probably the mindset. And the mindset has a tendency to separate and to oppose. So we just had with Stefano this conversation about nature versus the built environment, and we forget that cities are built on soil, and soil is part of the ecosystem, and so we need to rethink totally the concept behind the city and its relationship with nature. And in general, we have a tendency to separate all issues. So we have a tendency to separate our search for more sustainability from our search for social inclusion and for our search for quality of life. And we specialize those domains. They don't talk to each other. And in the end, we have a suboptimal result. So I think that's one of the main barrier that the European Bauhaus is supposed to try to contribute to tackle, which is to reconnect things that have been disconnected in the way we think about the transformation, and therefore to connect sustainability, inclusion, and quality of life and meaning, which is very important for people. Right? Okay. And when we look at what are the opportunities we have, I think they lie in people, and they lie in the wealth of experience we have in Europe and probably across the world, but that which is fully connected in terms of looking for the solutions. When we listen to what people tell us, you know that the European Bauhaus is in a current design phase where we listen. We have 1,300 inputs that we have received over the last months. What people tell us is quite aligned with what Stefano was also mentioning. Reconnecting with nature or rebuilding, rethinking our relationship with nature comes as one of the top topics that comes from what we listen to. But then we have to listen at what people say on how to get there. And so they insist a lot on governance issues, that if there were more involved in the decisions associated to the transformation of the place, probably we will get more of those solutions and grid applications. And we have also to look at what they tell us about their experiences. We have a lot of grassroots organization, micro enterprises, small, low-scale projects that come and say, well, we don't need money. We need institutional recognition. We need access to networks, to knowledge. And so that's also rethinking perhaps the way we see giving agency and empowering people to bring the transformation. So I just wanted to flag this, the need to think those transformations at various levels. So we are at European level, there's probably a city level, but there's a lot which can be done also if you look at the neighborhood, the district, and this kind of level, and if we give agency. And here there's a kind of continuity from the private garden up to the kind of forest that Stefano was mentioning. And this is something that comes very strongly from what we're listening to.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, Anna Maria, do you have anything to build on that discussion, or would you like to wait for the next question, which I think you will nail right on the head for us?
I can add a little bit, thank you. I completely agree that we need to be listening to people. People live in cities. Cities are places where people live, work and age, and not just spaces that they're passing through. And we need to make cities, or help people to make cities and the green infrastructure in the cities places where they can get to, places where they want to be. And I come at this from the angle of community well-being as well as health, and one of the main drivers of community well-being is social relationships and connections. And so people are, I mean, green infrastructure is really important in the way that people connect with the places where they live, with the cities where they live. It affects how they feel about those places, but it also provides that space for people to gather and to do things and to do things together. But some of the challenges around that are things that I'm sure you've all been discussing today about, you know, how to make a green space an attractive green space, a safe green space, because I'm sure this happens in every city. I'm only speaking for the UK at the moment. An attractive green space can be made, but it can very quickly become an unsafe area where people engage in unsafe activities. So there's a level of governance involved there that's a bit above the grassroots level. And it's, as Xavier was saying, like giving people the agency to get involved in decision making so that the green spaces are accessible to everybody in the city. Everybody lives there. So everybody needs to get involved. And any changes that we make to green spaces have the potential to increase inequality if we're not very careful. Yeah,
we'll get to discussions about social equity and equality quite soon. And I appreciate your mentioning the safety aspect because we need safety, and we also need wild nature on our retinas.
Yeah.
So finding out how to mix that and achieve both, that is a good challenge. So I think we need to put our landscape architects to work solving that one for us. Karlis has joined us underway. Karlis, do you know the question we're discussing now, or should I give you a short reminder of it?
Well, it seems that people have been picking elements from different topics. So if you give me an idea what you would like me to focus on, then I do so.
Yeah, the question was, what are the barriers and opportunities to be addressed to make European cities more human-centered, more livable, and more sustainable? But we've had a lot of discussion about the ecological sustainability. So if you have an answer about the human-centered and livable, part of that question. So what barriers and opportunities do we have there?
Thank you very much for bringing me in and integrating into the discussion, and apologies for being a bit late due to a previous engagement running over time. Well, coming to barriers, I don't think I have much to add to what has already been mentioned in this session that I heard all throughout the day. But I may perhaps underline a few of the elements that I think are important. So among the barriers representing the European Commission, of course, the first thing we tend to look at is the policy related issues. So if you were to assume for a moment a top-down approach, then what do we really ensure the best possible coordination between actions and policies? And this doesn't mean just juxtaposing the actions and policies, but also the coordination within them. So what I mean, for example, are the different administrative levels that need attention. That's EU, that's national, that's regional, and also local. But I'd like to really add the individual level, because I think that the decision making and the planning of an individual is a crucial element to making a lot of the livability happen. What we see sometimes remains difficult is having a medium or long-term view to these things. I mean, anybody who has tried to cultivate apples in their backyard might know that by planting a tree, it doesn't bear the fruit in the first autumn. And much like this, I like to use it as a metaphor for green infrastructures, but for the energy transition in general. I think that we need a little bit of time, planning, care and nurture to these policies and actions in order to them to start bearing fruit.
Yeah.
The second, yeah.
Okay, no, sorry. Continue,
no,
please.
No, I don't want to start a monologue here, so please, David.
Okay. There will be more opportunities for monologues as we progress here. So, but just one idea that we started touching on, which I would like to just get back to, that is, and even you mentioned it, that the one level we need to act on is the individual level, the decisions we're making as individuals in every day. And one of the barriers that I perceive is this digital transformation, where not only children, but everyone is getting sucked into this digital existence, where they're basically forgetting everything else and probably on their way to spending even more time inside and not having the healthy contact with blue-green infrastructure or nature-based solutions in their local environments. And actually, that is the health consequences of that are, especially on children and teenagers. Those are very well documented. So I also perceive that as a barrier, that we have this really fascinating, wonderful, it's like shiny objects and crows. We just can't let it alone. We just have to have it. But then it just sucks us into it, and we get lost in it, I believe. Okay, so next question, and sorry for my monologue there. The next question, which I would like to start with you, Anna Maria. It is about the health benefits to be gained from increased greening of urban areas. Can we use green infrastructure to address imbalances in urban health equity?
Okay, thank you. I'll try not to go on for too long. Okay. I think I just want to respond to what you just said as well about digital. I apologize, I have a dog trying to get in, but one of the most surprising things that we found in our recent research during COVID, and I know this is a later question, but is young people telling us how much they want to get out and get into space, not necessarily green space, but outside space and see each other, which we found quite surprising. It's not just in our own research, but in other research that's been done in community groups, because we thought also that young people are so in the digital world that they wouldn't notice that they weren't getting outside, but that's actually not true. So I think there's some definite hope there that you know, that they are looking out and they are wanting to get into that green space. But to get back to this question, so there are so many health benefits of green space, and on a wider scale, which I'm sure my other panelists will be talking about as well, is you know, the potential reversal reduction in climate change, in air pollution, and those knock-on effects on diseases like asthma and cancer and many other physical long-term diseases. On a smaller scale, there's been so much research done about the effects of green space, particularly on mental health. There's really strong evidence that urban green space has a positive effect on mood and on people's mental health and stress, anxiety, depression, and also from physical health, opening up opportunities for active travel, walking, cycling, running. Those are sort of really obvious benefits of green space. There's also, as I mentioned before, the activities that people do in green space, the social connections that can be built by having that green space to play in, to, you know, have leisure activities in, and there's the in-between space as well. There's the spaces in between a private garden and a public space where people can say hello to each other, where neighbours can meet each other. So there's a progression there, and those are some of the ways that contribute. And there's the activities that are done in green space contribute to people's well-being, which in turn could contribute to their mental health, can contribute to people's physical health, can improve the area itself. But there's also evidence that just appreciating nature and having nature there has a strong effect on people's mental health and mood. So not even doing anything in nature, but being there.
Yeah, thank you, Anna Maria. I think you might be lecturing about these things at your university on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
So, I will be registering for your class.
Thank you. Oh, I need to say something about equity as well, don't I?
Yes, you could.
I got
very
carried
well say
away.
something about that.
I will be quick. Yeah, so there's no one size fits all solution. We can use green infrastructure to address health inequalities and well-being inequalities, but we've got to be careful, as I mentioned before, to be inclusive, to come up with things that don't exclude people unintentionally. So some examples of this that we found in our research before are creating bumping spaces, putting benches and public art in a space, making it greener, putting grass there instead of a hard surface. Makes it very nice, but it also makes it difficult for disabled people to get to that space and to get around that space and through that space. We've also found in research with people with severe mental illness, such as schizophrenia, they can find the wildness of a natural space a bit frightening. And finally, people with people who've been refugees, for example, don't want to get involved in the research we've done. They don't want to get involved in walking groups, for example. They've done enough of the walking. So it's a case of asking people and getting people involved in making these decisions and hearing what they need. And that's the only way that we're going to get it right.
Yeah. And actually, I think the one size fits all idea it doesn't really apply. As you said, some people have different needs than others. So there's this hierarchy of challenge that also needs to be addressed so that all users are well in the nature that we have in our cities. Stefano, I wonder if we can bring you into this discussion because we do need nature in our daily lives. And if you look at the old paradigm for architecture, where you basically had a separation between buildings and nature at the edge of the building footprint. And now we're moving toward an integration of buildings and nature. And at the same time, as we mentioned before, we're also spending more and more time inside. So a question for you, Stefano, is how far can we go with this integration of buildings and nature? Can we live in nature in our living rooms? Stefano, you need to unmute your microphone, sorry.
I believe the change is not only physical, it's basically conceptual. So the point is first to recognize that all our efforts to put nature outside our building, outside our cities, outside our bodies, or let's say to control fencing, our garden and so on, were let's say suddenly demonstrated as let's say very let's say paradoxical and forced when we have understood that a microorganism like a virus has in a few weeks, let's say, the entire population of our species all over the planet, let's say, coming up and breathing inside us, inside our body. So I believe that the fragility that is basically the most relevant legacy of this pandemic is also related with this shock and this sudden consideration or sudden awareness that nature, that we are part of nature, so we are completely integrated with nature. And that's the first conceptual, let's say, step here to do. The other one, which is more related to our profession, to my profession, is that when we talk about putting together living nature and building living nature and let's say artificial environment, because our cities are basically completely surrounded by mineral surfaces, it's not about let's say an ornamental attitude, because in the history of architecture, in the history of urban plans and master plans, I thought that we have seen a lot of efforts and experience that we're trying to put together these two spheres, but basically it was about a kind of decorative attitude. So what we have to do now is totally different. And if I can add a third reason for doing that, is that we should probably try to reduce also in terms of the vocabulary of the language we are normally used. Well, when we talk about climate change or global warming, we are not aware, but we transmit basically fears and threats. And I believe we have to stop to do that, because this is not the better way to convince people that introducing green surfaces, foresting environments, well, doing what we can do in order to develop what Anne-Marie was saying, it's not about reacting to fears or threats, but it's a way to improve our life. It's a way to make our life more, let's say, efficient, also to improve the quality of life, is to reduce poverty, is to develop a tremendous amount of new opportunity of work and job for the young generation. So that's what we have to do when we talk about make our cities greener, or what in terms of let's say urban regeneration. So it's another conceptual change or switch, because it's about changing our vocabulary, and that's so important for what is about politically.
Well, when you're talking about conceptual changes, then you're actually, it sounds to me like you're getting back to reimagining ourselves. And we'll get to that discussion on, or we can get to that discussion on question 4. So let's continue toward question 4, and thank you, Stefano. Xavier and Karlis, do you have anything to add to that particular discussion about the health benefits of green infrastructure?
Just one anecdote from the stories we're collecting, which adds to the long list of benefits that Anne-Marie has been highlighting, is the focus on nutrition. One of the stories we collected was about a homeless facility in London, which is built around a garden. And among the numerous benefits that were seen about having this facility in a garden, in social terms, in physical terms, there was the focus on nutrition, which was always very difficult for homeless people to get attention. And so cultivating jointly in the garden has been a way to achieve that goal. That's just the anecdote.
Yeah, thank you for that. Karlis, did you have anything to add?
Thank you very much. Well, I like looking at figures, and I recall an interesting study from Harvard a few years back, which found that when we work in green offices, then they found there was a 26% boost in cognition and 30% fewer sickness-related absences. And in addition, people reported a 6% rise in their quality of sleep, which you wouldn't associate to offices at all. And another one was from University of Virginia, which found that properly designed and maintained outdoor green space has the potential to reduce violent crime and gun violence, to make the communities safer. However, the maintenance point is important because they also found that conversely, when green spaces are poorly designed and inadequately maintained, that can help spread crime.
Well, that's a wonderful conclusion to that topic. The business case.
Just a second, because I see that in the Q&A tool we have a few. We had a few questions indeed on what function can vegetation play in architecture, and I think we have answered that by now. But we also have someone who wants hard evidence, and I see that Karlis, for example, just has given us a few examples of research that show that there is evidence of the benefits, but maybe Karlis and other panelists, if you do have the links to this publication or the names, please do not hesitate to put them in the chat. I think the participant would very much appreciate that. And I have someone as well who wanted to say to Stefano that they very much agree that we have to change vocabulary and our way of thinking and reimagining ourselves.
Yeah, thank you.
Just a quick comment.
Yeah, thank you, Milena. One thing that we haven't mentioned so far, that is the International Well Standard, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. But that's a standard that's similar to BREEAM and the other environmental standards for buildings, but that is addressing wellness from buildings and our environments. So the well standard is quite a rich depository for different aspects of wellness, including biophilic quality. And there are also a number of scientific references that you can access through the well standard. So I would recommend looking into that for anybody who wants to dive deeper into that. Let's go to the next question. We've already touched on this a little bit, but let's see if we have more to say about this. The question is, what have we learned from the COVID lockdown about the need for nature in our immediate environment? And how can we leverage that new knowledge as we're building back better and greener? And Karlis, we wanted to start with you on that question. Leveraging COVID.
Thank you very much. I was just finishing up typing into the comments some links, but now I'm done, so everybody can access that in the meantime. Okay, so on COVID, really when we started work with our European Green Deal, we knew the importance of the transition. We need to decarbonize and to work with end-use sectors and to have better penetration of renewable energy. And then the pandemic hit. So we found ourselves sort of chained indoors, the economy slowing down and the household incomes shrinking. So at the Commission, we needed to stop and rethink our approach to what it really means. And sort of gladly to us, we understood that the underlying pillars of the green transition are in fact very valid and offer plenty of opportunities to COVID. So in that sense, we didn't need to change the underlying tissue. However, what we needed to do, and I think which is pertinent still now, is thinking of how to bring about what I would like to call a change at a cerebral level of individuals for that transition, because it's not just about continuing on as usual, just using different words. I think that people are becoming really active participants in their ecosystem, but also from the energy point of view on the energy markets. So they can produce, they can store, they can sell their own energy. By the mid of this century, we expect that almost half of EU households will be producing their own renewable energy. And with this empowerment comes a lot of responsibility. And I believe in one of the earlier sessions today, a colleague from the Commission mentioned that we really need to make use of this critical moment where people are more ready to reflect on their values and to take action. So we have a window of a couple of years before things either get back into their usual track or we manage to set things moving in a better direction. So we need to really do a lot of things before we can say that we have really secured the energy transition at a cerebral level. What we're doing at EU level, it's of course policy and making funds more available in the multi-annual financial framework and the recovery and resilience facility in particular.
Yeah, you mentioned what sometimes we call energy prosumers, which is acknowledging the role of individual households and energy consumers in a decentralized energy market. Do you see any parallels between that and a possible decentralization of the way we implement nature-based solutions in cities? Can we sort of put more responsibility into the hands of individuals and responsibility and ownership?
Absolutely, the answer is yes, but it also depends on how organically this change takes place, because even a good thing, if imposed, will create a reaction. So we need to be really careful about the how within that constellation, I would say. Okay,
we're getting short on time here. So my suggestion is that we just move on unless other panelists are burning to say something about this COVID question. Is there anybody that needs to have the floor for that? No, okay. The next question. This is getting sort of into the area of the new European Bauhaus area of work. The question is, how can citizens be involved in the process of imagining and planning greener, healthier, and more sustainable cities? And actually, we already started on that discussion just now, Karlis. But since this is such a central topic to the Bauhaus initiative, Xavier, do you think you can take that question?
I can start at least to share some thoughts. And it's linked to also what Karlis was saying before. I think if the objective is to change the mindset, to have an impact on individual decisions, basically, you need to think about what are the drivers. And among the drivers, there's this idea that people regain agency in the shaping of the places, regain capacity to co-create, and if they are able to co-create, then this will flow in the right way. Huh? And we see this coming very strongly in what we're listening to. First, people tell us that local level is the right footage to focus on the big challenges. So they tell us, well, global warming or rising inequality needs to find a solution in a local context where it improves lives of people. And so there's this kind of translation dimension, which is very important. They then tell us that we cannot separate the reflection on the built environment, the public spaces, from the social and economic reality that goes with it. So it has to be thought at the same time. And that's why it has to be underpinned by new governance models that actually involve people not in one-off processes of co-design, but in the long run, associate people with the responsibility that Karlis was mentioning into shaping the places. This is something which comes very, very strongly. Then, of course, people tell us also that we may have to perhaps think in terms of reshaping the catalogue of rights. So, for example, they tell us that access to a green environment should not be a luxury, but it should be a right. So there are also some shifting of certain concepts that could be looked at. But this is definitely a strong dimension. I think that would be a key question for the how of the new European Bauhaus. That is how you equip local authorities with the method that allow to integrate those dimensions of sustainability, social inclusion, and culture, I would say, into meaningful transformation projects that bring people along. And so we see a lot of experience in this field, how to share this experience in an effective way, how to connect the different words that have to contribute to shaping those success stories. It's what we have probably to discover. We have started with a community of partners. We have nearly 140 official partners. And this is a very interesting community because it's not the type of community which comes from only one sector. And it's not the type of community where everybody works at the same level. We have grassroots organization and international networks. We have people that work on sustainability, people that come from the creative sectors, people that work more on social inclusion. So this is a very unique community, and we see a lot of will in this community to actually share and try to support each other, to play their role in the transformation at different levels. And so that's what we have to discover, and that's why we are talking about supporting a movement rather than having a kind of top-down, one-fits-all strategy that should land everywhere.
Yeah.
I will stop here, Titi.
Well, I am very, very excited to see how this develops with the European Bauhaus movement. I think it's really exciting. Here in Norway, we had a prime minister named Gro Harlem Brundtland. She was instrumental in forming the local Agenda 21 initiative. Does that ring any bells for anyone? That may be too many years old, but that is basically, it sounds like there are a lot of parallels between the local Agenda 21 initiative that grew out of the Rio conference and the Bauhaus movement, because both were from a global or international level attempting to instigate stakeholder involvement and inclusion at a very local level. And there were probably a lot of successes, and I can definitely tell you about some failures with that as well. But maybe there's some interesting experiences from the local 21 agenda movement that could be interesting to look at. Are there any others?
David, I might have sorry, I might have a last question that we can all ask to maybe Stefano and Marie as well. Just a last comment. I think this has been handled as well on our first panel today, but is there a possibility to reimagine the new European Bauhaus, which is not only human-centered, but which also give more space and voices for other species than the human one? Is a question that we have received. Of course, this has been treated during the day, but it might be interesting to hear this topic as well here in the context of the new European Bauhaus.
Yeah, maybe Stefano could speak to that, because he has several times mentioned the that we are a part of nature. Stefano.
Well, for sure. Bauhaus from the beginning was not simply a school, it was a way to bridge a gap between different disciplines, let's say different intelligences. And I believe that what we have to do in our cities, because don't forget that Europe is made by cities, basically, it's first to, let's say, bridge the gap between three main spheres, which is the sphere of local communities, to be, let's say, in condition to represent here, to be that the voices that coming from our communities, their request be, let's say, from. The second sphere is the sphere of, let's say, the creative sector, so research center, university, schools, or what is about designing the future. And the third sphere is the sphere of the companies, so that are capable to produce the reality of the future. And this is something that we have to do, I believe, try to let's say, to be coherent with Bauhaus original DNA. At the same time, the next challenge is about how we can be in condition to, let's say, include the point of view, the perspective of our living species in our way to the world. And that's an amazing challenge, but it's I think it's important if we also go back to what we're seeing, observing during the pandemic, during the lockdown. So for some weeks, our city were inhabited by non-domestic species that are coming back in a way. They were, let's say, for once moment, try to, let's say, not be obliged to be in a very, let's say, artificial environments, but they can occupy the public space that we are used to occupy. So I believe that this vision, this idea of cohabitation was extremely important, and we have to do our best to understand that there are other intelligence that can, let's say, be complementary to our intelligence, and that in a certain way, the paradox of anthropocentrism is that the more we are in condition to, let's say, represent and absorb and consider the point of view of the other species, the more we are demonstrating our, let's say, power.
Yeah.
But it's what we have to do.
Yeah, thank you, Stefano. We have just passed our 6 o'clock limit. So that is the end of our session. The question that we didn't get to, which I hope everyone can be reflecting on anyway, even after the session, The question is, we've seen that green infrastructure delivers multiple benefits to public health. And the question is, how can we engage the European Union health sector in this issue? Are they engaged well enough? And given all of the discussion through the day about silos between different sectors, I have a feeling there are some interesting potentials there to collaborate more fully with health sector actors. So that's the end of our session. Thank you very much for a very interesting discussion to all of you.